Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Fix Your BS, where the podcast, we dive deep into belief systems that shape our lives and hold us back from achieving our dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Pursley, also known as Dr. G, and in each episode, we'll explore powerful conversations with successful individuals in business, money, relationships, health, and, of course, personal growth. Join us as we unpack their journeys, challenge limiting beliefs, and discover practical insights to help you build your dream life on your terms. It's time to fix your BS and unlock your full potential. I've got one of my favorite people now. His name's Ben Newman. And if you don't know who Ben Newman is, you've been hiding under a rock. I'm telling you, he is a highly sought after performance coach, the author of bestsellers like The Standard, Uncommon Leadership, and Leave Your Legacy. He's worked with the top athletes, Fortune 500 companies, and high achievers worldwide. He's also the host of the Burn podcast, really great podcast. Got to tune into that. Click the link in the comments, by the way, if you would like access to any of those items, where he dives into the fire that fuels elite performers. Get ready for a deep dive into the belief systems that separate the best from the rest with Ben Newman. Thanks, Ben, for being here. Appreciate you.
Dr. G, I am fired up to be with you. I know we are so close in terms of proximity, so close in terms of mindset and what we think about. So very excited to be with you and your listeners. Thanks for having me.
We are very aligned, that's for sure. Alignment is one of my big words. I use that a lot. You've used some really great words. And one of the things you talk about a lot is leadership. And I love that. In fact, in your book, Uncommon Leadership, which I've read through and made a bunch of notes, you dive deep into some people that, are great leaders and learned a lot about. I learned a lot about leadership, even though I've been a leader for a while. And I just love some of the things that you talk about in that. In fact, I'm going to ask you a question about it just to start off. People don't realize how important their daily practices are. So in Uncommon Leadership, you talk about mental toughness, and being the backbone of leadership is daily practices. So what daily practices do you recommend for strengthening mental toughness, especially when someone's belief systems are challenged by adversity?
What a powerful question to get us rolling. And I love how you're diving right in. First off, I would share with you that for any leader, and all of us are leaders, regardless of where you are in your career right now, what chapter you're in, whether it's in your home, whether it's with friends, whether it's in your career, I believe we are all leaders, and it starts with leading ourselves. And I'm a huge believer that you can only lead somebody to the level of discipline in which you live. And what I always love thinking about is, what if we had the opportunity to sit down and hear the stories of success of every single person listening to this podcast right now? The periods of time where you operated at your highest level of success. You might be in it right now. Maybe it was one quarter last year. Maybe it was 3 years in a row. Maybe you've been on fire for a long period of time. I would have to imagine that it was your discipline, and there were daily habits that were driving that momentum and success. It wasn't luck. It wasn't just a short-term fix. It was heavy doses of discipline, doing the things you knew and you need to continue to do to drive success. I think it comes down to discipline, and I think it comes down to limiting that self-talk and knowing that if you've had success in the past, that's an indicator of success that you can have in front of you.
That is so, so true. Some of the things that I love talking about with people that I consult, or just people that I work with in general, is discipline. Now, most people don't really know how to set a goal. They don't even know. They just think in terms of generalities. They don't think in terms of like, I'm going to go towards this specific goal. And when you talk about discipline, for the most part, if people say, I want to, lose weight, I want to make more money, I want to have a better career, I want a better business, whatever their overall goal is, and they can define it, I think most people know the steps that it would really take. Like, they know the general movement that they need to make toward that. And I know there's a buzzword nowadays in motivation. Personally, I can't stand that word. I hate the word motivation, because that's something that wears away. Now, you might have a different perspective. I don't think you do based on all your books that I've read. Talk to me about the difference between discipline and motivation and your perspective between those things in order to move someone toward their goals.
Well, motivation is fleeting, which I think is what you're referring to. Motivation only lasts so long. And so I'm a big believer. In fact, it drives me crazy, Dr. G, when somebody brings me in to speak and they say, we brought in this great motivational speaker. Like, I do not like being called a motivational speaker, even though I've been getting paid to speak since 2006, which is a long time in this speaking game. I am not a motivational speaker. I am a coach. And if we spend time together, whether it's in a small group or whether it's at a convention with thousands, if I can't empower or inspire each individual by making it feel like it's an individual coaching conversation, then I'm not doing my job. Because motivation, where you can't even remember what I said a week later, it's a waste of time. I'm not there to entertain. It's there to help people maybe see a different perspective, to understand their strength, and to understand that their past success might actually be what hides the secrets to their future success. Meaning, every single one of us, once again, we could listen to every single person, listen to their story, say, what was that period of time when you drove your highest level of success? And they could say, it was when I did this. Okay, tell me about your daily habits when you did that. And we could reverse engineer that success, identify the exact daily habits. And then I think it's critically important that there's clarity, clear, like intentional, focused clarity on exactly where it is that you're going. Not, I would like to do this, or, oh, it would be neat if I did this in the future. It's literally saying, in the year 2035, I am going to establish this, this, and this. And in the next 3 years, I'll be here. And then in the next 3 years after that, I'll be here. And after that 6-year period of time, I'll be on track to hit this goal by 2035. People fear living in that type of intention, but to ever find out how great we can be, that's the intention that it's going to take with great discipline and strong mental toughness to achieve long-term success. Anybody can win for a week or a couple of days or the occasional great month. But if you're talking about having sustained success, it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of intentional focus.
So you mentioned fear. Fear I talk a lot about. Why do you think so many people let fear dictate their actions? Why do they dream and then talk themselves out of it through something you've already mentioned, which is internal speak, or that person inside your mind, or the fear that pops up? Why do you think that people allow that to limit them and keep them from their full potential and their goals in life?
Well, I think it comes down oftentimes to leadership, right? Let's think of somebody listening who's a leader who has a team. I'll give you an example, one of my favorite examples. I had the opportunity for 5 years to work under Nick Saban at the University of Alabama and to be part of 2 national championships. And I didn't, go in and give a motivational speech during training camp. I was there 15 to 20 times a year doing work with the entire team. It might be in lifts, it might be on mental toughness, it might be one-on-one work with somebody struggling through something. And one of the things that was fascinating, same that I see with Coach Kleiman at Kansas State in my 11 years with him, it was the same with Coach Saban. They didn't allow fears to come into the building. They helped these young men understand how to think like a champion and to not focus on fears, but back to focusing on the disciplines, the mindset, the choices you can make every day, that when you sustain those choices, the byproduct is winning at very high levels. So a lot of times we listen to fear, or fear takes over because we put ourselves in an environment that isn't reducing fear. You think Nick Saban accepted us to walk around fearful? Hell no. You walk into a meeting with Coach Saban, he had you wanting to run through a brick wall with no helmet on, because he knew, I can help you understand that if you come here to Alabama, doesn't mean we won't lose, doesn't mean that things are perfect, doesn't mean you won't have challenge and adversity, but I'm not going to allow fear to drive how you show up. We're going to allow our standards to drive how we show up. And when you have a leader that believes that way, Coach Kleiman is the same way. It naturally reduces fear and causes us to focus on the things we can control, which is that process that drives success. So that's an example of having a great leader. The problem for many, and you know this through your work because you're working and coaching and consulting every day, just like I am, is that there are individuals. Greg, you turn on the TV and it tells you the time isn't right. Let's wait on the sideline and see what's going to happen. Or the economy's telling us, I don't know. Or well, Trump just got elected. Let's wait and see what's going to happen. You're in the mortgage business. Well, just wait until rates go down again. And people have to stop listening to the narrative that's pushed on them and choose to think the way they want to think. Surround yourself with the people who believe in you. And I don't care what the financial climate is, go back to the period of time in which you drove success and repeat those behaviors. Living that way will silence fear. It will never eliminate fear, but it'll help silence fear.
Wow, what an answer, man. And you've mentioned a couple of my other favorite words. Think. Henry Ford has that famous quote, thinking's the hardest work there is. That's why so few people do it. And one of my favorite.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, dude. I use that one all the time because it's so true. I think we live in a world that we're so distracted that we don't take the time to really focus or think about what we want, about how we want to show up. We're kind of reactive to the world. Now, one of the things you mentioned also is standards. It's pretty simple. If you say, I want to gain muscle, then there's pretty specific actions you need to take. And you have to have standards that you've set in place in order to take those actions. Now, I'm going to ask you something about you when it comes to standards. And it's the price of standards. Holding yourself at a high standard has its rewards, but it also has a cost. So I'd like you to tell me, if you can, a personal story when you were committed to excellence and it cost you something. Could be anything, maybe a relationship or a deal or peace of mind. So, what is something that you can pop up, and this is kind of on the spot, I know, but when you had to hold to your standards, but it cost you something, and then we'll talk about how do you navigate that.
Well, I've said for years that the price of greatness is sacrifice. Now, when I say that, I want to be very careful that people understand and hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying, because this is my belief, sacrifice means you're not going to see your family, you're not going to do the things that are important personally, you're not going to do X, you're not going to do Y, you're not going to do Z. There might be limitations on certain areas of your life. But when I say sacrifice, it's what can you do with your environment? Is it maybe waking up earlier for a specified period of time and then getting used to waking up earlier, understanding that's a sacrifice where you're going to take back some of your time to accomplish more, as opposed to what most people do. Well, health is going to be important to me now. So when I'm done with my job at 5 o'clock, I'm now going to go to the gym at 6:30 and skip dinner with my family. Terrible choice. I believe, and I just want to let people know, we're going to reach the point in our episode where this vein's going to start popping out of my neck for those watching on YouTube. And you're going to just know that Ben's really getting intense. But here's the reality. I'm not yelling at anybody. This is my passion. I had a mother who passed away 11 days before my 8th birthday, divorced when I was 6 months old, never knew my parents together. So I embrace every single day because my mom died at 38 and I'm a 46-year-old man. That means I've been given 8 extra years that my mom never got. So when I listen to individuals like you that are listening and you share your fears, your doubts, the excuses, I have a low tolerance for it because I know that there's adjustments you can make in your environment with sacrifice. So I encourage you, take back 15 minutes, take back 30 minutes, do it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, establish that as a discipline, then wake up another 15, another 30, and recognize the next level of your success is actually a math problem. Not by taking math in minutes away from your family and what's important to you, taking math away oftentimes from unnecessary sleep, meaning some people will oversleep. Everybody talks about get the right amount of sleep. Dr. G, you know this. There's people who oversleep, right? There's people who actually sleep more than they need to. Or there's people who are watching 3 hours of YouTube every day. For God's sakes, take 30 minutes of your YouTube back and do something productive to advance yourself forward. Or take an hour back. You still get 2 hours of YouTube. It's plenty. You don't need 3. And so that sacrifice allows you to create disciplines. One of those disciplines for me, we could do a whole nother episode on this. But today was and many people are going to realize now that I've got screws loose. Today was the 2070th straight day that I've done a workout called my unrequired workout. It takes about 60 minutes. It's 10 exercises plus 500 push-ups, all body weight exercises. I don't say this to impress anybody, to impress upon the point. Most people cannot complete this workout one time, and I've done it for 2,070 straight days. And Dr. G gets to do it at an event that he's attending with me in St. Louis on April the 12th. So I don't know if that just excited him, but everybody goes at their own pace. But the point is, I've decided to make sacrifice in order to create a discipline, and that discipline allows me to be an example. When I step in a room with a group of professional athletes or collegiate athletes or somebody in corporate America, they can tell that I'm doing what I say I'm going to do, which is living a life of discipline, which allows myself as a leader and a coach to have a different conversation than somebody who's living with a lack of discipline.
That is so important. And we're going to dive into that because I love that. And just so everybody knows, we went ahead and did the math. My team right over here, that is 5.67 years, just so you guys know. 5.67 years of being disciplined. And you know what's interesting is once you do something that moves you in the right direction, and the right direction, in my opinion, is defined by the individual. It's what that person is trying to reach, their goal they're trying to reach. That's the direction they want to move. And that's what success really is, in my opinion, is movement toward achieving a goal. And it takes a standard and it takes discipline. But what's interesting is once you get into that habit, it just becomes who you are. It becomes something that if you miss it, you would almost feel like you weren't complete in the day. It would be like trying to go a whole day without breathing. And it's not going to work because it's not who you are. You're a human being. You have to breathe in order to live. And I think that's what people miss is, first of all, you mentioned sleeping. I think a lot of people sleep in because they don't want to get out of bed because they are replaying the whole day that they don't like in the first place. So they're not living for themselves. They're living some other life that's designed for some other person or it's helping someone else. It's not for them. So they sleep in, not because they need sleep, but because they're so unexcited about the day that they're just stuck in their bed and they're like, oh, I got to go through this again. So talk to me a little bit about that. And I'm also going to talk a little bit more about discipline and success, because one of the things you talk about is failures and success and how micro failures can lead to macro success. So small failures leading to macro success. And that ties back to what you're saying, because yes, it's been, what was it? 5.67 years. Is that what it was? I think 5.67 years. But there was a point where you probably started and then maybe failed. And what most people do when they fail is they say, well, that didn't work. That's not for me. I give up. So how did you turn that micro failing into macro success?
Well, I think in any time you fall short of what your intention is, right? So I think a lot of times people don't realize when they do fail, they say fail. I would rather say we fell short of our expectations or it didn't work out. We didn't get the result that we wanted. Yes, it's failing, but I'm saying it a different way because what you say goes out of your mouth, goes into your ears, and that's what you believe. Many people actually live in this world of failure because it's almost easier, because there's more people who choose complacency and failure than actually recognizing that your highest level of toughness and strength is built, to your point, during those times. It's easier to do what the masses do, which is to say, I failed. Let me go get into a group with people who talk about this failure and what do we do with the failure? And all they're doing is talking about failure rather than talking about the solutions, which becomes a mindset. There's a principle called expectancy theory in psychology. That which you focus on expands. When you focus on negative, you get more negative. You focus on positive, you get more positive. So why wouldn't we choose to say, okay, I didn't get the result that I wanted, but what did I learn from it? What did I learn from this? What is the strength that I developed? What is the resilience that was built through going through this? And then it's a choice for you to not go back there. The greatest life lesson I ever learned, it came from my mom. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. It's a choice to continue to live in failure. It's a choice to continue to remain complacent. It's a choice to not do the work, but it's also a choice to say, I will not let that define me. unless I'm using it to define me through the strength I have built to become more resilient, persistent, and disciplined through that pain. And I would just encourage anybody who's been through pain to look at it or to find the source of strength rather than looking at it for failure, only focusing on failure and then winding up depressed, having trouble getting out of bed because you can't even clearly understand why you want to get out of bed. I mean, these things are so deep. And a lot of times I think people want the easy answer. You and I have been doing this for a long time. This is not easy. I think there's too many people who say, well, just, wake up and plant your feet to the ground and do some meditation and everything's going to be great. It's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, the reality is, I'm not saying meditation, visualization, I do those things, but to try to tell somebody that if I just plant my feet to the ground and look up to the sky and pray that everything's going to be okay, you better get to work. Because if you're not willing to do the work and to believe in yourself and to silence your failures or to silence fear, it makes it really hard to win.
Yeah, man. And that is so true. I think one of the problems in our society, especially over the last, I'd say around 8 to 10 years, in my opinion, has been the victim mentality. And that's really what you're talking about. Well, woe is me. I can't do anything about it. It's just what it is and blah, 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 blah. And it's somebody else's fault. And, I'm a religious person, and I believe that the great I am, when you say I am, that's looking internally. It's looking inside yourself to seek God. Therefore, you find the answers from God because that's internally. When you're looking externally for the answers, that's when you allow the devil or the negative forces to creep into your life because you're looking to fulfill something externally that can't be fulfilled externally. And so when people talk about meditation, which I used to view as like a woo-woo word, like it's something that only, I don't know, only like gurus living in a mountain do, or something like that. Like there's some foreign land outside of this country. It's something that I didn't understand. When in reality, what my viewpoint on meditation now is really meditating is simply silencing the mind so you can focus, so you can come up with the answers from God, which is within you. That's kind of my perspective of it. What's your perspective on meditation?
And I do that every morning. I visualize. There's things that I talk about. There's prayer. Absolutely, I do those things. And I apologize if I wasn't clear enough on that. All of those things are critically important, but I think there's far too many coaches and leaders who are saying, if you do that, everything's going to be okay. And it's like, no. If you do that, it'll help you create the mindset to take on the challenges in a better way. But just by meditating or visualizing, nothing is going to happen without your ability to control your discipline and your performance through great habits every single day.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, I am saying that. I just think people hear the word meditation and they go, oh, you got to sit with the feet crossed and whatever. And I'm like, no. Meditation to me is a form of prayer. And it's just something you should do and should consistently work on to focus. And I also agree, everything you're mentioning are tools. I tried a lot of what people would consider gurus or thought leaders and their morning routines and their evening routines and their workout routines and so on and so forth. And what I figured out was, if it didn't work for me, it doesn't mean that it's not right, because it could be right for them. I had to build my own routine. So what I advocate for people is utilize everybody else's tools and figure out what works for you in order to, get yourself to where you're content and happy and moving towards a goal and excited about getting up in the morning. And so that's one of the things that I'm excited. By the way, I am excited about the St. Louis Summit and that workout. Like, I've been talking about it for 3 months. My wife is like, dude, you're obsessed with this. I'm like, that's right. You're right. Obsessed. It's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Talk to me about obsessions real quick and what your viewpoint is on that, because people view obsessing over things as wrong. And I think it's something that we should do. I think we should obsess over the things that matter to us. But tell me a little bit about that. I want your perspective on it.
Well, there's so many different ways that you could unpack this. I mentioned earlier that my mother was divorced when I was 6 months old, never knew my parents together. My dad was a drug addict, alcoholic, manic depressive, bipolar, everything under the sun. That's a pretty significant cocktail that my mom had to live with, and she made a decision. I'm not going to live with that cocktail, and I'll always admire her strength and her courage. And the reality is, when I know that that is in my DNA, I have to be very careful. So whether it's obsessed or addictive, you have to understand and have a level of awareness of who you are. So if I know that's in me, it's very hard. I've made a choice. And, I used to say that I joke around, but now it's like I'm really just reminding my wife of the truth that if I'm addicted to buying Air Jordans and working out every day, this is a really good formula for us to follow, because with what's in my DNA, I could be addicted or obsessed with some other things that are not very positive. And so I choose to love buying tennis shoes and working out all the time. And so I think obsessions, if we have a level of awareness and understanding, can be fine. Somebody says, I'm obsessed with learning. I'm obsessed with getting better. I'm obsessed with a never finished mindset. As long as the obsessions lead to something positive and we don't lose sight, or those obsessions aren't keeping you away from your loved ones, your significant others, your children, the things that are important to you, I think there can be very healthy obsessions, very healthy relationships. But I think you have to have awareness of who you are and what's going on. It's like, one of the first steps in AA, and my father was recovering. I've never gone through it, but I have plenty of clients that we help them become sober, or, do things in order to lead better, cleaner lives, is you have to admit that you have a problem first. And so I think there's awareness and an understanding of who you are, why you are who you are, and turning those into healthy, positive things to focus on when it comes to obsession or addiction.
That's awesome. Wow, that's fantastic. I'll tell you what, we have unpacked some stuff in 26 minutes. I'm impressed at the pace that we're moving, but it's so important for people. And I want people to re-listen to this too, because, today you might get a few pointers out of this, and it's only because who you are right now, you're going to get certain information. You implement things in your life, and that information is going to help change things in your life. You pay attention, take the things that are changing in a positive direction, re-implement those, eliminate the things that are moving you in the wrong direction or a negative direction, and then re-listen to this again, and you will get different pointers because you're listening from a different perspective, because you're a new person. And that's what I tell people. Come back to something like this 26 minutes on a little drive out in the countryside or something, you'll pick up new things that you have to then implement. So I want to tell everybody, listen to this, come back to it, because everything that Ben is talking about, these are principles of life. They will not change. And if you're fighting to find some new way of looking at it or whatever, you're not going to find it. I always tell people, I've talked to hundreds of just successful, amazing individuals, and Ben and I and other people that I've talked to that are really successful. They have the same principles, but they package them in different stories. The principles never change, and I just want people to realize that. And come back.
Can I share something to that point that I think is really important?
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier, and you were referencing, and I call it the individual's toolbox, right? So I have our mental toughness playbook. We're on our 4th edition. Your mental toughness playbook has been sold or downloaded over 1 million times since our first edition came out in 2013. It has the 6 proven mental training tools that we use that drive high performance. But to your point earlier, somebody may read, study, and learn those and go, okay, 3 of those apply to me. But I've got 2 other tools that when I couple them with those 3 of those 6, I realize that is the recipe that's going to allow me to drive continual peak performance. So I think it's very important that when you learn or you sign up for a course or you do something, that you pull out what is best suited for you, your personality, your voice, how you learn, how you teach, how you implement. We have a program that now many people are saying is one of the fastest growing, and it's one of the fastest growing, but it's one of the most sought after programs for the development of coaches and leaders. It's called Coach to Coaches. And people beat down my door to start doing this a couple years ago. And finally I said yes, but it's an 8-week program that teaches coaches everything that I've done for over 19 plus years. There's no 30,000 foot view. We literally teach everybody exactly what we do. And that's one of the most important lessons that we carry through week over week is helping people develop their tools that are going to make them successful. I don't have somebody go through my program. There are options. You could use all of our tools, but I say you have to find what works for you. Because if all of a sudden after 8 weeks, you're trying to pretend like you're me with veins popping out of your neck and you're coming with this intensity, which is natural for me, but unnatural for you, and you stop using tools that have made you successful to use tools that have made me successful, that is not a recipe for success. And so I think it's important that for those that are leading, we have to listen, we have to understand, we have to teach, we have to keep learning as leaders. I've still got 2 coaches and I'm reading books every day. And so it's a constant pursuit, but really leaning into those opportunities to learn and grow and to find your voice at your highest level.
That's awesome. I really believe 2 things. I think everyone's a leader, every single person. I don't care who you are. You're leading someone, whether you know it or not. Somebody's looking up to you. You're leading them. And number 2, I think every person should have a coach. I've gone through many, many coaching programs and currently have a coach, and they've leveled up every time because as I level up, and I have to level up the coach. And I'm constantly seeking that. And you're so right. You should have that part of your life. It should be something that that you're constantly looking. Now, I want to talk for a minute for success, because you talk about own your success in your book, Own Your Success.
That's that's 2012 right there. I've been doing this for a minute.
I know. But in that, one of the things I like to talk about is fear of success, because I think a lot of people have fear of success. I feel like they don't feel like they're worthy of success. And I always say, no one can love you more than you love you. Meaning, if the highest potential love is 10 out of 10 and you love yourself a 4 out of 10, and someone else says they love you a 10 out of 10, you won't believe them because you only love yourself 4 out of 10. Well, the same thing applies to success. I believe that you can only be as successful as you love yourself, or you will allow yourself to be, as you believe your worth. As your worth raises, your belief of your worth, the higher the potential for success. So that's one of the things I talk about. But in that book, you talk about self-respect. You talk about owning, loving yourself and owning that success. But in moments where emotions run high, how do you coach individuals in choosing to have rational actions as opposed to allowing those emotions to overflow and then crush the momentum? Is there a specific strategy that you put into play for people?
Yeah, so Coach Saban, when he interviewed me in his office, just the GOAT and I sitting in his office in 2017, he asked me what I was going to share with his players that day. And I mentioned that I was going to share a concept called standard over feelings. We can't allow our feelings to dictate how we show up. We have to continue to drive the standards that we know that will cause us to win. We're all going to face emotion. We're all going to face challenge. We're all going to face adversity. And similar to how we've shared in our conversation thus far today, we either allow those fears, the pain, the uncertainty, the doubt, what the TV tells us, what the media tells us, what the economy tells us to drive our emotions and our decisions, or we remember the standards. Or you're part of a program like Alabama and say, what are the standards if I silence these feelings? What are the standards if I rise up to these standards that Coach Saban has created? What will happen? Well, you'll probably walk out of the Malmore Athletic Complex in your 4 years or 3 years in Tuscaloosa, probably a champion in some regard, either an SEC champion or a national champion, but you're probably going to walk out of here a champion. And so it's choosing to silence those feelings. Don't allow them to dictate how you show up, and have your standards overtake your feelings. And I believe that the conversation we had in his office that day on standard over feelings is what kept me at Alabama for 5 years.
Standards over feelings is awesome. In fact, I think I'm going to actually put that in my workout room. I think I'm going to put that on the wall. Just, I don't know why it popped into my head. I was like, man, I need to put that, just the standards and then a line and then feelings, because it's so true. When you have high emotion, you have low intelligence. We've all been in a situation where we've had an argument with someone and we say something that you regret saying because you're really high emotion. You're not saying things that are very intelligent, and making decisions in in the business world, I teach people all the time, you do not make decisions with emotion. You make decisions with data, only data. Data doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. And there's no emotion in numbers. It's like, it is what it is. So make a decision based on that. And I really, really love that. So let's transition this over into legacy, because something that you talk about a lot, especially in your book, leave your legacy.
You're going through the whole gamut.
I got all your books, man.
I love it.
I love your stuff. I really do. I've got all your books, and I'm always looking for, just like you are, constantly searching for something, the leading edge, the little nugget, the information. And I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. I have people come to me sometimes and they go, oh my gosh, I read 50 books this year, because, as a leader, you start inspiring people. When they get inspired, they want to like prove something to you, like, hey, I did something. And I'm like, okay, great. You read 50 books. What did you get out of those books that you implemented in your life, and how did it change your life? I do a lot of public speaking as well, just like you, and you'll see the seminar junkies is what I call them. You know who I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, they're at every seminar. They're sitting there like, I was at your last one. I was at your last one. The question I always have is, what did you get out of this? And what have you implemented that has changed your life? Because nothing happens until you take action. So let's talk about that for a second. Leaving your legacy. Tell me a little bit about your position on legacy. Like, what steps do you recommend for someone who is struggling to define their own legacy?
Well, one of the questions I love for somebody who has uncertainty or lack of clarity, struggling with vision, is grab your future and bring it to today.
Mm-hmm.
And answer that based upon everything you would dream, you're willing to work for, not worried about how somebody would judge you. Like, grab your future, bring it to today. What do you see? What would you love to accomplish? And then you have to become one of those individuals who shows up and does something about it. Unfortunately, Dr. G, and you know this, we live in a world where individuals tell you how great they want to be. But when we have a conversation with their action, we realize they don't want it that bad. And so, refer to it as a seminar junkie, as you say. Mm-hmm. That person is showing up thinking, if I just show up to this seminar, I will attract success. But if you say, okay, when was the last time you were at a seminar? 8 weeks ago. What have you changed? What's a daily discipline that you've not? Oh, I haven't changed any daily disciplines. I'm trying to find the one. And they become so analytical to finding the one, they never move forward. And so I think it's important that you define what you want. Recognize, in my opinion, that your legacy is actually built with what you choose to do today. So leaving a legacy, for me, it's actually leaving a living legacy. It's the impact I make today. Maybe in this interview, you said something or I've said something that impacts somebody's life and they never show up the same way. Well, that means we were living our legacy today to make this world a better place. Legacy isn't just something that one day you pass away and then people talk about who you were. I think for them to mention how you are remembered is going to be based upon what you choose to do today.
I totally agree with that. I think people get caught up with legacy, like they bring it back to money. In fact, a lot of people bring so many things over to money. Success, how much money? It's like, that's not really success. Success to me is living your authentic self, and figuring out who that really is the first hurdle. And I love your idea of bringing, the future self to now and saying, well, what steps do I need to take to get to that? Now, one of the things that I typically run into with people when we're talking about the future and we're talking about what you really want, typically they're either they don't know or they're really vague. Then when we break it down and say, really just let yourself go, just let the information flow through you and tell me, what would it be if nothing mattered? Like if it was just you put your life the way you wanted in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, what would that look like? And what's interesting, I have found, is people will start to immediately cast doubts on the things that they're trying to say as to why they can't have it. And they will call them reasons, but really they're excuses. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like if somebody starts with, man, I want to own a Ferrari and I want to go and travel, to Europe, and I want to maybe own a boat, and, but, like I can't, blah, 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 and they go down that rabbit hole. How do you get them to shut that off and get them to understand that they're just making excuses and it's doubt talking as opposed to the reasons why I can't. Tell me a little bit about that, or what your thoughts are.
Well, first off, whenever you say the word but negates what you said before it. So the moment that I say I want this, this, and this, but, well, then you really didn't believe that you can have that. So you either believe it or you don't believe it. You can't have both, right? So it's either faith and belief or you actually fear it, and you can't have both. So it's faith or fear. And so I think for everybody, you have to establish what is it. And also, do you really want a Ferrari? Do you really want this trip? And if you do, then so be it. Believe in it and put the discipline and action behind it, and be willing to have long obedience in the same direction with aggressive patience to allow that to happen. Most people say they want something, but then they're only willing to work 3 days for it. You know, in order for me to stay in pursuit of being in the best shape that I can be in, so I can actually have a conversation with one of the players that I work with that just won the Super Bowl, and they actually listen and pay attention, I have to stay in good shape. So I'm, what did you say, 5.67 years straight of working out to make sure as a 46-year-old man, that young kid putting on those pads that we all watched on the Super Bowl knocking somebody's head off is willing to have a conversation with me. But that takes long obedience. It wasn't me working out for 3 days and going, you know what? I don't really need to be in good shape for these NFL players to listen to me. Well, talk about bullshit. That's bullshit. Because I promise you, if you're not on top of your disciplines, you will not have athlete clients.
Dude, I love what you said there too. Aggressive patience. I'll open up a little bit and tell you a little bit about me. Two of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. Number one, aggressive patience I was aggressive, but I wasn't patient. I wanted everything now. And I was a seminar junkie, which is why I can relate. And I'm very authentic with those people, is because I went to every seminar looking for the secret. I went and spent a lot of time and money and everything, and nothing changed. And nothing's changed because I didn't change. And I was looking for everything and I wanted it now, but I didn't want to change in order to get it. And that created a ton of tension and resistance in me and in my whole life, which then overpoured into everything in my life. So when you're talking about that aggressive patience, I love that. I have a note on that. That's what I was looking for. I was like, dude, I actually wrote that down somewhere as I was preparing for this interview. But talk to me more about aggressive patience and how people can find that now. And I'll talk a little bit about how I kind of found it as you talk, but you'll probably hit on the exact same thing.
Well, you know, many people, they could say that they want to accomplish a goal, right? I want to lose 20 pounds. And they lose 3 pounds in the first week. They strip themselves of caloric intake. They go to a diet that's actually unsustainable. And then they still look at the scale and go, but I only lost 3 pounds and I like barely ate anything. I'm not going to do this. It's not that important for me to lose 20 pounds. As opposed to them saying, okay, I'm going to build a sustainable lifestyle by removing one item off my plate every meal. Or even we could start with one meal, right? And in 6 months, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, but I'm going to change my relationship with food. I'm going to change how I think about food. I'm going to change how I make my decisions when I sit down to eat. And I'm a little bit different than most. There's some people, they go to these fad diets, drink a shake for breakfast, only have this for lunch, and have chicken breast for dinner and do that for the rest of your life. Nobody's going to do that. For a lifetime, it's not happening. So somebody may lose weight for 30 or 60 days. It's not sustainable. I would rather have somebody say, okay, exactly how you eat today. Every meal, take one thing off the plate. So for breakfast, you're having oatmeal, eggs, and bacon. Take the bacon off the plate. The bacon was 300 calories. You do that 30 days, 300 times 30 days is 9,000 calories by taking off the bacon. For lunch, you normally have a burger with fries, get a salad instead of the fries, it's another 300 calories. At dinner, you have steak, mashed potatoes, and a vegetable, get the mashed potatoes off, another 300 calories. We've eliminated 900 calories in a day. That's 27,000 calories in a month. Remember earlier I talked about your time? Now we're talking about calories. The next level of your success is a math problem. If you strip away 27,000 calories a month for 6 months. I promise you're going to lose 20 pounds. You're going to change your relationship with food. And what did I say? Still eat the eggs and the oatmeal. Still eat the cheeseburger. Just have a salad. Still have the steak and vegetables. You're still eating things you like to eat. And I think that's where we can change behaviors and live in the environment of a real life, as opposed to people thinking that, this person's a robot. He doesn't do X, he doesn't do Y, he doesn't do Z. So I love helping people change their behaviors and their disciplines in a real framework of life, not some la-la land.
I love that. I love that because it's true. It's true. A lot of people try to make changes too quick. And really it comes back to, who you really are. You're going to make those decisions if they're acceptable or unacceptable. A really great example I use for people is if I walked up to you right now, Ben, and I said, hey, do you want a cigarette? What would you tell me?
Heck no.
Right. Why? Because
I don't smoke.
You don't smoke. Right.
I'm not putting that in my body.
Right. Okay. So your identity is, look, I'm not a smoker. That's who you believe you are. Like, I'm not a smoker. So it's like somebody that goes from wanting to lose weight to becoming an athlete. Well, if you make those small changes over time, you can become that athlete and who you are. And then all of a sudden, it's just who you are. You don't have to think about it. It's not painful to skip something or knock something off, or, it's painful to miss a workout because you're like, oh, I just love it so much. And that's what people miss. They try to do something in the short term that they think is going to reach a goal, but it's not sustainable. And that works in every area of life: relationships, business, career, finances, health. It doesn't matter. In every area, it works. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the 4 Ps framework, because I think that's awesome as well.
We're going to have to do another interview. I don't know if we have time to go into all this.
I know. I told you I had so much stuff I wanted to talk about. You got
to tell, if people want the 4 Ps, you got to tell them to go buy the standard.
Go buy the standard. That's right. Hey, look, here you go. Bam. If you want the 4 Ps, go buy the standard.
Page 24.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I love that you know your stuff so well. I really appreciate you being here, Ben. I know we've talked and we're 46 minutes in, which is a very jam-packed 46 minutes. You can come hang out with Ben and I at the St. Louis Summit. It's on April 12th. You can click the link. All of Ben's information is in the links below. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Fix Your BS. I hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to challenge your own belief systems. If you're ready to take the next step and join the Fix Your BS community dedicated to your personal transformation, check out my coaching group by clicking the link in the description, where we will work together to build your dream life. Remember, the only thing standing between you and your goals are your beliefs and your actions. So let's fix them. Until next time, keep believing in yourself. And as always, I'm here to help you fix your BS.